We're talking some beer. Our man Nagel is in studio, and I'll let you introduce our next guest.
Yeah, so primarily I try and bring on New York State breweries, and it occurred to me yesterday that I had never brought on anybody from Copper City, and ordinarily I just show up at their brewery and offer, to bring their beer on and talk about it if they'll just give me a growler fill so I can bring it in. And luckily Danny was like, you have a radio show that you want to talk about beer, and I asked him to come in, and he was gracious enough to come in early and bring a bunch of good beer. So,
nice. Well, the funny thing you said is a lot of times people are like, "Nah, I'm not going on the radio."
Yeah, a lot of people are they shy away from it, but not Danny. So,
and this is again Copper City Brewing out in Rome. So. First, let's begin with this, especially those watching on TV. You brought in 3 giant-sized cans, and this is, Nagel, what you talked about before. It's called a...
Crowler.
A crowler. Obviously, the growler is usually like a glass, looks like an old milk jug. Yeah. This is a can, a giant-sized can.
Yeah. And I'll let Danny speak to the advantages of using this over a glass growler. But.
Yeah, certainly, guys. I really appreciate you having me.
Come right up to that.
I love doing the radio, and my brewmaster Eric, he hates doing it, and he always throws me under the bus. So today's my turn again. Yeah, these crowlers are fantastic. We started these 2 years ago, actually a year ago on our first anniversary. And I tell you, having the advantages of a can that can travel in the mountains, go on the boat, go on the beach, and really holds in freshness. These cans are amazing. You just need a little machine to cinch it up once you fill it full of beer, and you're good for quite some time.
So give us a little history on Copper City. How long you been around? Why'd you get started, and what are you up to today?
Yeah, we've been around for just over 2 years now. Our anniversary was in November, and, I started because, Eric throws me under the bus to go on radio shows. My wife throws me under the bus for life reasons. So my wife started a brewery in 2014 and didn't tell me about it. Yeah, so she formed an LLC called Copper City Brewing Company, and I wonder why she was harping on me for 2 years. You got to start this brewery. You got to start this brewery. I'm like, I'm not going to start a brewery. And so I get worn down over time, and finally I find Eric Daniels one day at a brew fest, and we worked out a plan. And when he said yes, I'm like, well, Lori, I guess now we're going to start a brewery.
So it was her idea.
It was her idea from the get-go. Wow. Yeah, it was a fantastic idea. I mean, just what Rome really needed at the time. Rome's on a big resurgence, and when you see a brewery and new coffee shops and things like that pop up in a town, you know they're going somewhere.
All right, very cool, Nagel, and don't be shy to chime in here. I know you're the expert in this field, so I'm kind of blindly sipping my way through it.
No, you're doing a great job.
What do we have in the cup here now?
In the cup here today is a very fresh stout. So stouts are known to be real dark, almost look like coffee. You're going to get notes of dark chocolate, regular, even kind of like a sweet chocolate, and coffee flavors, because the malts that are used to make it are very highly roasted. So they look and they smell, and if you just ate some of the barley that was roasted to make a stout, it would taste like coffee.
Yeah, and this is very good, by the way. I mean, I guess there's Nagel really doesn't ever bring in anything where I'm like,
Yeah,
but
no, that's not true at all.
Well, you're right.
I've seen you make faces that I've only seen on children.
when they're trying a food for the first time.
Exactly. You like spinach, kid?
No, this is very good, though. There is a little chocolate taste. There's a little coffee taste as well. I asked you what amalgamated meant. I said, is that a flavor? Is that what it tastes like? Is that a technique? What is amalgamated?
Because amalgamated, I guess I used it in a couple of different ways. Amalgamated is when you bring up many different things together to make something. And our old brew club, and it's still an active brew club, was called the Amalgamated. Oh Jesus, it was too many big words. It was like the Amalgamated Brews Club, and it was in Utica, and it was headed by one of the brewers at Saranac. And I tell you, when you have a leader of your group that has that kind of resume and that kind of knowledge, I can tell you that 3-4 of his group started breweries.
Wow! Yeah, they're popping up all over the place. It's a great thing,
and it's a fitting title for a beer from Rome with their history in metallurgy. Amalgamation is when you bring a bunch of metals together and melt them together. So. It's a great name for a beer from Copper City.
Absolutely. Tell us more about Copper City. When you go up there, do you guys do tastings regularly? Do you serve food? What's the atmosphere like?
Yeah,
What do you guys do there?
2 years in business, we've really haven't moved much from our business plan. We are all about the beer. I mean, 100% about the beer. So tasting room's about 2,400 square feet. So our brew room's fairly small, but the tap room and the brewery itself is quite big. So yeah, tastings, flights. We have 12 on tap all the time. Big list of ciders, big list of New York State wines. We do special
you get the
events where we
wines,
do New York State liquors. We do Bloody Mary Sundays once a month. And we'll also do Moscow Mules, our version of Moscow
that's cool.
Mules. So we don't do those often. We're more about the beer. No food at the brewery, but we have food trucks pretty much throughout the year. We do have a food truck that's stuck with us throughout the winter, which is pretty rare around here.
And you got to have, I like the idea of the Moscow Mule every once in a while because Copper City, it's got to be served in a copper mug.
There you go.
Perfect pairing there.
It is, and it's we wait a while on it because when you want to buy 500 copper mugs, you kind of got to save up your quarters,
or your
Absolutely.
pennies,
Absolutely. All right. And then, so Nagel's cracked open another, I want to call it a kegerator. That's not what it is. It's called a crowler. A crowler.
This does smell good. If you don't smell it across the room by now, you will in just a moment.
Yeah. So the first one had a coffee, had a kind of morning good coffee smell. This one is now your orange juice.
I was just going to say that.
Ooh, a little citrusy.
So this is
it
lot
is. Holy
citrusy.
cow.
Oh, man, that is
What's this
right
called?
up my alley.
So this is the all mucked up, I'm assuming, because she's fairly cloudy.
It's called All Mucked Up.
The all mucked up is, it's our version of an East Coast New England style IPA, meant to be quite cloudy, meant to be really citrusy. You can smell this thing across the room. Smells like grapefruit. It'll smell like
Grapefruit,
orange.
yeah. Absolutely.
Does get a little apricot in there.
Hazy and juicy. So what makes it hazy? Is it the wheat malt that you use?
So we, as Eric started to make this beer, it was just more and more and more wheat. So he's up to over 60% wheat now in this beer.
Which works out good for New York State breweries because New York State produces a ton of wheat malt and, not a lot of 2-row and 6-row barley malt, but we do produce a lot of wheat. So
This is a really good, so it was nice that you had the last beer was good for a day like today, but this reminds me of what I wish the day was, 80 degrees, sunny. This would be the perfect beer for that.
This, to me, is an all-around beer. I mean, if you dig fruit, I mean, that the aroma itself just knocks you off your feet. Like, I can't even wait to drink this thing.
it almost sounds illegal.
Something suspicious in
not
there.
for much longer, though.
Wow, that's good.
Is that a compliment?
Oh, very much so, yeah.
What's this is called All Mucked Up. What's the percentage on this?
This is 6.5.
6.5. So this is safe to mow your lawn with, or no?
This
Sunny
is
day.
borderline. This is borderline.
Just don't go onto the road. Stay
Depends
on
on
the
how big your
lawn.
lawn is. Yeah, I guess. So what was it? Right, you mentioned the real grapefruit, and then so the first two we've tried so far. Even though that's a stout, it's not overpowering. They both have a lighter feel in the mouth. They're not. I guess I'll say they're not overpowering.
When you can control fermentation, the temperatures of how your beers ferment, you can exclude alcoholic flavors, which we couldn't do as home brewers. You're brewing in a bucket in your basement, and if it's 80 degrees in your basement, guess what? Your beer's going to ferment at 80 plus degrees, and that sucker's going to taste like gasoline you put in your lawnmower. When you can control the temperature of your beer as it's creating its alcohol and CO2, you can really control the flavors that way. So I appreciate that. It's something that I think that Eric does very well. He controls temperature and he controls oxygen in the beer. Once you get oxygen in your beer, it destroys the flavor. So he's been very, very careful about that.
That's why they say the cans are usually, in some cases, or people have started to realize, at least me personally, I prefer drinking my beer out of a can than a bottle.
And that's all the rage right now.
Yeah.
Because they are so versatile. I mean, I think the bottle was sexy back in the day just because it was a bottle, and it was
right.
like maybe it was harder to do, and cans seemed cheap because your cheapest beer came in a can.
Right.
But now, we're seeing companies that are having to completely change their whole way of business to do cans.
Even their bottles are aluminum now. They're doing aluminum.
Well, it's kind of funny, too, that he mentions that because a lot of breweries made a big investment maybe 10, 15 years ago as to how they were going to package their beers, and the 22-ounce bottle became very popular. It was it was for a beer that was too expensive to go into a six-pack. Nobody was going to pay $25 for a six-pack of beer, but you could put it in this 22-ounce bottle and charge $10 for it. And then within, 8 to 10 years, the scene completely changed, and everybody's doing 16-ounce cans and 32-ounce cans now. So those people who made that investment, of, in that bottling line are now like, oh,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Darn.
it's like me buying anything technology. If you want something to be obsolete, just let me know and I'll buy it. And then
We've got. Do we have one more to try?
yeah, we do have one more to try.
I don't want to push this along. Because I still have half my beer here. I'll take care of that in a second. But so we've gone with a stout. This was the grapefruit flavor. What do you citrusy? It's
IPA?
So this is a New England style IPA. Like I said, it's
yeah.
mostly uses a lot of wheat to keep it cloudy. That's the sexiest thing nowadays. The cloudier the beer, the better. It does create a different mouthfeel for the beer. It helps. I think it really helps the look and the flavor kind of match now because this beer's been around long enough. The third one we're going to try is another IPA. And what I'm trying to showcase here is how Eric is now he's not so hooked on the hops. He's now really looking at the soul of the beer, and the soul of the beer is the yeast. The yeast is going to give you flavors like you would never think. You think, oh, it's always the malt, it's always the hops. It's giving me that flavor, and a lot of that's coming from the yeast itself. So he's starting to find yeast that work together. And
cool.
Something we never did in the past was you always just use one kind of yeast because usually one yeast wins, the other one loses, falls out, and then you just get that dominant yeast. Now he's got yeasts that work in harmony, and he's using some Belgian yeast and he's using some American yeast, and watching the flavors they produce.
I always like. Sorry to interrupt you, but when I have some beers, you look at the bottom after a while, you can kind of see the yeast in there, and I actually prefer that because I see it, and then you just turn the bottle to the side a little and turn it. And then drinking, and it's going to be a good one.
Yeah, and that's that was around for years. Hefeweizens and things. You wanted that. You wanted that little bit of yeast.
You wanted to see it
at the end. You want to shake that up and get that real yeast flavor out of it.
Right.
And with these, it's a lot of hop particles you'll get that's left in there. There was a beer back in the day that's still just doing very well called Heady Topper out of Vermont. And that beer, when they first started making it, they said, don't pour it in a glass because we're embarrassed by how much hop particles is in that dang thing. So what do you do immediately? You put it in a glass. You want to see it.
Yeah.
What's that floating in there?
So we're gonna get in and try this last one. Give us some info on the guy who brews, Eric. And
Eric.
You're
I'll
really
make fun of
impressed
this
with his
guy
work.
all day long. So Eric's been brewing now. He's probably on 13, 14 years now of brewing. He was my kind of my mentor when I started. Eric's when he starts something, he doesn't skimp. He just goes right in. Jumped in all grain, had all the good stuff. Bought himself a stainless steel fermenter, which nobody does as a home brewer. And I got to know him really well, and his beer was phenomenal. I had to call my wife several times to come pick me up after I stopped by his house.
Oh, were you at Eric's again?
And Eric always said, "Hey, Dan, you left your coat here again." I'm like, "I know." He goes, "All right, I'll see you in a minute." So 3 hours later, I would come home.
I forgot my coat.
So Eric is a software engineer. Eric loves anything with flow diagrams, math. This is his thing. So Eric built the brew room. Eric assembled the brew room. Eric put in all of our cooling, put in all of the glycol himself. Nobody helped this guy. Never done in his life. Just figured it out. So when it comes to smarts, this guy's got to be one of the smartest. And I tell you, beer is certainly his passion. He goes nuts for it. It's all he does is read and mess with recipes. And I think that he's reached my level of love for brewing. I used to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning to brew. And he'd be like, "Dude, you're out of your mind." Because by the time he got out of bed, I was already done. And he's doing that now, too, where he can't think of anything else but what's going to be the next beer. And he loves to make something new. To make something over and over and over again, not his thing. But he does it because we have some really popular beers. But, man, he loves making new beers.
Well, my compliments.
Yeah, this is great. What's this last one here that we're diving
this
into?
one
is
is called
IPA.
Iterator 3. Eric's a geek, so he's a computer geek. So Iterator, probably can't explain it, but it's it's something in a software program that continually repeats itself, but changes one or two items as it goes through its process. So it's the same thing, but it's not quite the same thing. So with this one, his idea
Which is kind of the same thing like you're saying about his brewing.
He did.
Yeah.
He goes, "Well, this is what I want to brew, so I'm just going to go ahead and make up a name for it, and then everybody will understand why I want to brew something different all the time." So he's taken this IPA, and he's changed the hops the first time, left the malt bill the same, left the yeast the same. Second time, he did the same thing, changed the hops. Third time, he changed the yeast. Fourth time he changed the yeast again. So he's doing little things to make it different, but the difference in flavor that it's causing is phenomenal. He used 100% Belgian yeast on our Iterator 4, and that beer got such high ratings on Untappd in the beginning because nobody had anything like it. It was just blew you out of the water. Like, wow, there's citrus flavors in this thing, but what is that thing I'm not catching? And it wasn't like an off flavor. It was just a brand new flavor.
Nice.
Interesting. All right, so Copper City Brewing out in Rome. Let us know again, where are you online? When can people come up?
Yeah,
for
we're closed
tastings?
Mondays, but we're open every other day. We're open by 10 or 11 most days, and closed by 10 to 11 most days. It's all right on our website. Town Square runs our website for us, coppercitybrewing.com. If you want to,
they do a good job with that, don't they?
Oh, they do a fantastic job with that. Every time I want to change, it's as easy as just like sending an email and
one less thing
boom,
you have to worry
done.
about.
Yeah. Yep.
Absolutely. It's coppercitybrewing.com.
coppercitybrewing.com, and all the information is right there. Like I said, always got 11 to 12 beers on tap. We've got a bunch of great ciders. Anybody that doesn't want to touch beer but is gluten-free, we've always got an option for you there. I think we've got 6 ciders right now going either in a can or actually on tap. And like you mentioned food, we don't do food, but we're very lucky. We sit on the east side of Rome, and there are fantastic restaurants right down the street, and they deliver. 30
Perfect.
minutes.
Awesome. Oh, that's awesome.
Stuff better than I can make, and it's right there at your fingertips.
All right, Dan Friedman.
Frieden.
I said it right.
Yep.
Frieden. Dan Frieden, Copper City Brewing. Great job. CopperCityBrewing.com. You're on Facebook, too.